So we do have one problem with some of our stored procedures, specifically change column value and fetch image, where we're using concat to create a query. So I'm going to look at fetch image to start, and you'll see that what it's doing is it's taking the value that was passed in as call name, and it's basically concatenating it into this long query. So this is a piece of text, and it's creating a big piece of text with this embedded in it. And the problem is that this leaves us vulnerable to SQL injection if somebody can control what gets passed in as call name. Now, the user doesn't have any control of call name directly if they're using the released interface to access pages. So for example, localhost 295p share thumbnail image 34. Here, this thumb image is just used in a URL rewrite rule, and this basically causes fetch image to get loaded with thumbnail image ID passed in as the column. So if I load this page as a user, what I'm really loading is this. So ID 34 and size is thumbnail image ID. So here's the image set ID. Here's the column name of the ID for the thumbnail image. Now, the first version wasn't vulnerable to changing column name, but this is, because here's the column name passed in as a parameter. So watch what happens if I add some SQL to this column name. So I'm going to add space or image ID equal 20. Now, this isn't a very good URL, so I could escape this by putting a %20 instead of a space. And here as well, %20 image ID, and here, and here. And then I'm also going to escape this equal sign with %3d, which is the hex for an equal sign, and then access this URL. So that one didn't give me anything different, but let me mess around. Let me try 100. And let's try, there we go. So I ended up with image ID equal 100, and I got this different image. So what it's done here is it's actually allowed me to bypass the security around this particular image that I was fetching and access a different image instead by injecting SQL into the column name. So that's a problem. And there's a couple of different ways to fix it. But what I want to do, probably the easiest thing to do, is in my fetch image where I'm passing in size type key, I want to validate this. So I'm going to, at the very top, before I do anything else, I'm going to say if size type key not equal, and then shared database thumbnail image ID key, and size type key not equal shared database : page image ID key, and size type key not equal shared database : original image ID key. So if it's none of those values, I'm going to just return null. So that would be as if the fetch image failed. Otherwise, if it is one of these values, I'll do the normal thing. So let's go ahead and try this. If I load my version with the SQL injection, now I don't get anything back. But if I do the normal thing here, then it works fine. Now, I don't have to worry about SQL injection on this here because this is using parameter binding inside of the stored procedure. So the code for that is actually taking this set ID and executing the statement using that set ID. So there's no way to stick additional SQL in here that's going to have an effect other than causing no images to be found. So this one is safe now. But I'm also doing the same thing here in change column value. I'm using concat to add column name to a query and then preparing that query. So I need to make sure that column name is a legal value as well. And right now, if I go to change column value, I see that it's a private function and that the only place where it's called is here in the shared database class. So in these four functions, where it's passing in the value of column based on these constants. So this is going to be safe as long as there's no way for outside users to connect directly to the database. So we want to make sure that the database is behind a firewall and that the only way to get information from the database is through the website. So the website can access the database, but nobody else on the internet can. And that's really going to lock down that particular problem. I don't think we actually have to make any changes to the code here. But if we wanted to change the code, what we would do is probably in the stored procedure, we would add an if statement where we actually check to make sure that legitimate values for call name are being passed in.